Uh, Good day. It's 12 o'clock, so we can get started. So welcome everyone. My name is Kevin Ness. I'm chair of the Professional Development Committee as well as a council member for APEGS. So I'd like to welcome everybody to this APEGS member webinar. You know where you're at. So today's presentation will be on the role of asset management in designing for the future. We're going to be running from 12 o'clock to 1 o'clock local time. Jolene and Angela from APEGS are joining us today to help run the meeting, and we'll also be tracking attendance. For those that stay for the entire presentation, you will get a certificate of attendance that will be emailed to you within the next week or two. Because your attendance will be verified, you can claim this presentation as formal activity as part of your professional development activities. Microphones and chat have been muted, so please use the Q&A button if you have any questions. The Q&A button's at the top of your screen. So the questions will be answered at the end of the presentation as time permits. Also near the end of the presentation, you'll receive a link for Q&A to just a brief evaluation survey, and it will also be sent to you by email. We do appreciate your feedback. We actually do look at a lot of it, looking for what was of interest, what wasn't of interest, what you want to see for future webinars. So do appreciate any feedback that you can give us. And it does only take a few minutes to complete. Also note, we are looking for volunteers for future webinars. So if there's something you feel you can present on and you're interested in giving one of these presentations, you can just email cpd@apegs.ca. I would like to acknowledge, do that acknowledgement. I know we're spread out quite a ways on this on the call, but I would like to acknowledge the Indigenous people on all the lands that we're on today. While we meet on a virtual platform, I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge the importance of the lands which we each call home. We do this to reaffirm our commitment and responsibility in improving relationship between nations and improving our own understanding of local Indigenous peoples and their cultures. So today we have Darren Wiebe. He's CEO and founder of SAI Engineering, that are transforming infrastructure management in Canada. With a career spanning hands-on fieldwork to leadership roles in government, he founded ASI in 2023 to bridge the gap between policy and practice. ASI Engineering specialized in asset management, offering data-driven solutions for aging infrastructure. Darren's expertise in engineering, project management, and asset strategy ensures practical, field-based decision-making. So welcome, Jason, and over to you. Jason, you are muted if you're trying to speak.
Let's try that again. It's Darren, but thanks, Kevin. I appreciate it. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you, and I apologize for looking up your name.
That's all good. I'll be chatting to myself here for the next 45 minutes, so we started off with a little chuckle. That's good. Thanks for the introduction, Kevin. Thanks, everybody, for signing on. I really appreciate all of the attendance here today. It's really important. Asset management is very important to all of us and to the future of our infrastructure and in Canada here. And your attendance today just really builds and connects that community of people that care about the future of our infrastructure. You're gonna be in for a good presentation today here. This is a topic, like I said, that's so very important. My name is Darren. I'm the owner and principal engineer of ASI Engineering. Our mission is to transform the future of Western Canada by ensuring that every community's infrastructure stands strong. We're all about asset management and ensuring that there's confidence for owners in managing their infrastructure, and we're a consulting company that helps them along that journey. Today, my goal is to inspire you. You're going to learn some things along the way, hopefully pick up some tools and tricks and things like that. But really, my goal is just to have you leave here after this lunch hour to be inspired and to carry forward with some, key nuggets of information that you can take away from this webinar here. I want you to sit back and relax. Literally, I'm just going to be going through all these slides. We're going to be starting off with discussing some of the background. We're gonna reflect a little bit on kind of where we're at with our infrastructure here in Canada, and then we're going to get into the design improvements and things that we can use to adopt asset management in designing a better future for us all. I really welcome any direct contact after this presentation to myself, to my office. If you want to learn more, if you want to discuss what you took out of this webinar, or if you're interested to talk about a potential project or something like that, reach out to my office or myself directly. I'd love to talk to you. I'd love to connect. I'm in Regina here. Our office is in East Regina, and this is we'd love to meet up with anybody after the webinar. That said, I'm going to jump into it. We've got a packed webinar, so I'm going to just get going here. Let me just make sure things work. Okay, we're going to start with a story about a merchant. A merchant owned a ship that sprang a small leak. The repair would cost his month's profit. I'll fix it next quarter, he decided, taking on more cargo instead. The leak grew. Now repairs would cost 6 months' profit. I'll fix it next year, he reasoned, taking on more cargo to make up for the lost speed. By year's end, the ship could barely stay afloat. Repairs would cost everything he had. I can't afford to stop now, he thought, mortgaging his home to add yet more cargo. The ship sank. Standing on the shore, a wise trader told him, the best time to fix a problem is when you first realize it. The second best time is now. What do we learn from this story? The cost of procrastination. A merchant ignored a small leak in his ship to save short-term profits. Over time, the problem worsened, increasing repair costs. And eventually, the ship became unmanageable, and he lost everything. Second, we learned the illusion of control. The merchant rationalized his delays, believing he could outmaneuver consequences. Small problems don't immediately sink you, but they do deceive you into thinking that you're in control of them. And procrastination often disguises itself as strategic decision-making. Think on that one a little bit. Third is compounding problems. Every ignored issue adds weight until the burden is greater than the ship itself. Just one more quarter, just a little more cargo can lead to a disaster. Some of the key lessons or points to take away: small issues left unchecked become overwhelming. The best time to fix a problem is when you first notice it. The second best time is today. And avoid sacrificing long-term stability for short-term inconvenience. This webinar is going to be on infrastructure. When we're talking about infrastructure, we're talking about all of those systems in the built world that provide services to the public. So looking at the picture, it's the things like the transportation systems, the roads, the bridges, the energy and electricity assets, the water, wastewater, and stormwater systems, the telecommunication systems, the buildings, all of these assets that essentially provide services or hold up the systems that provide services to the public. So everything that we're going to talk in today about asset management is about physical assets and physical infrastructure. And we're going to be contrasting and comparing the traditional focus of asset management to more of the future focus or life cycle thinking. In the traditional focus, this is where reactive maintenance, where fix it when it breaks type of thinking was traditionally done, as well as like short-term planning, when we're working on, this year's budget and we're not keeping our head up to the horizon and thinking about the whole picture or the whole life cycle. Another area in traditional focus is siloed decision making. Who works in an organization where you have a sea of cubicles, where there's people that are 20, 30 feet away that you barely know their first name, or you don't even work together. There's different departments that are kind of not aligned properly. Like that's siloed decision making. That's a traditional way. It's a kind of a previous way of doing things. And lack of data-driven decision making, using that gut feel versus data-driven decisions using analytics, condition assessments, or real-time monitoring. We contrast that in this webinar against life cycle mindset. A life cycle mindset is looking at the entire life of the asset that we're designing and building. That's looking at it from its planning stage all the way to its renewal and disposal phase. And we're looking at being data-driven in our planning, using cross-sector collaboration, breaking those silos down, and having a life cycle-based decision-making. How do we do that? So this webinar proposes 4 key areas to focus on. The first one is life cycle thinking. The second one is smart technologies. The third one is organizational knowledge. And the fourth one is a concept that I want to present to you called asset management plans for new infrastructure. But before we get too much ahead of ourselves, there's probably a couple late people joining in. Let's start again. Welcome everybody to the APEGS webinar on the role of asset management in designing the future. My name is Darren, owner of ASI Engineering, and I'm thrilled to be with you here today. We're going to be going over first my story. Why am I here? Why is it me presenting this? I'm going to give you a bit of my background, and then we're going to talk about the current state of our infrastructure in Canada and lead into what asset management is, why is it so important, how do we adopt it? And then we're going to talk about practical framework for implementing it for our projects, our organizations, our assets, and the places that we live. We're going to go through those 4 key areas: life cycle thinking, smart technologies, organizational knowledge, and asset management plans for new infrastructure. And then we're going to end with a call to action. So a bit about me. After my engineering degree, I started at Sask Power in their transmission line asset department, and we started with essentially zero budget, zero consolidated records, no plans, no standards. And our goal, our mission was to develop a asset management system for the aging steel infrastructure that Sask Power had. There was no good knowledge on exactly where all of the assets were, what condition they were in, what maintenance needed to get done, when the end of service life was, or any of that. So fast forward 4 or 5 years, we developed a robust program where we developed inspection and maintenance standards, tested and brought in new materials, developed these $10 million capital renewal programs, and really got the ball rolling on the importance of renewing our infrastructure. And really there, I helped develop an asset management unit from scratch. From there, I went into the private sector and I traveled across North America for 4 or 5 years, consulting to utilities and governments on asset management and how to life extend or maintain their infrastructure. And it's funny, wherever I traveled, whether it's like right into Southern California, talking to Southern California Edison, or into Oregon or British Columbia, all of these different asset owners were really at the same point or phase in their asset management journey. Some were a notch ahead of other ones, but they were all really at that phase where, when I entered Sask Power, was, what do I have? Where is it? What condition is it in? What do I do with it? How do I prioritize this infrastructure? There was just a lack of that knowledge and application of those wise principles of asset management. There was interest in it, but as far as folks executing it and having these robust programs where they knew the end of their service life, where they were pushing the life cycle and getting additional years out of their assets, none of that was really implemented yet all across North America. When I was in the private sector, I really learned from the ground up how to really develop a company, as well as, from writing proposals to hiring and training staff to overseeing field projects, managing the expenses and client relationships. And I really got a good understanding of kind of how to develop this model to help people, help asset owners, help people in their roles. It took me on the road too much. Like I said, 4 or 5 years across North America. I came back to work full-time in Regina for the executive government for the Ministry of Sask Builds and Procurement as the Director of Asset Management. We did some really good work within the government, had some amazing staff and amazing people we worked with. We grew this asset management division from 3 people to 10 people in a period of 2 years. We developed long-term asset management plans and inspection contracts, and we built a centralized asset management reporting tool database so that everything was all of the information was centralized into one location, and learned a lot there, of course, from how executive government makes decisions with capital funds, with their asset management data that's being used to drive decisions. And really, I reflected at that time on what I learned in the last 15 years about the lack of asset management expertise in decision-making roles. And I knew I had to do something about it. I saw too many gaps, and I had some really good North American, international experience. So I jumped out of the government with both feet, went to Best Buy, grabbed a couple monitors, opened up my office here, a 150 square foot office with a blank piece of paper, and I got to work. And over these past 3 years, we've built relationships across Western Canada. We're actively working across the western part of Canada, helping owners and infrastructure asset managers gain confidence in managing their infrastructure. And we're on a mission. Our mission is to transform the future of Western Canada by ensuring every community's infrastructure stands strong. Now let's talk a bit about the background of where we're at with Canada. So infrastructure in Canada. It correlates closely to the population growth in Canada. So between 1950 and about now, we grew from about 14 million to about 40 million people. That's an incredible increase. The Federation of Canadian Municipalities put out an infrastructure report card that indicated that 59% of our infrastructure in Canada is over 40 years old, and actually 28% of our infrastructure in Canada is over 80 years old. So how did we get there? After World War II, there was the post-war expansion. So this is the baby boomer years when there's a lot of growth in Canada, a lot of expansion throughout the provinces and especially west into the prairies here. And infrastructure boomed along with that population growth. There was a significant increase, things were going well, and there was a lot of growth. And then it halted. In about the 70s to 2010, there was a period where infrastructure investments slowed down significantly. The Federation of Canadian Municipalities, in their infrastructure report card, reports that between 1970 and 2010, we underinvested in our infrastructure. Their studies have indicated that 3.8% of the country's GDP is required just for infrastructure to stand still. Because infrastructure is typically outdoors, it's exposed to the environment, it degrades over time, it corrodes, weathers, breaks down, things like that. You need to invest some money every year into your infrastructure just for it to maintain its status quo, just for it to stand still. And they calculated that at about 3.8% of the country's GDP is needed. And for a period of 40 years, we underinvested in our infrastructure, which led to deterioration, which led to an issue that we have to deal with now. Into the mid-2000s, our government finally caught on and started two significant programs, one being Canada's Infrastructure Bank, where they opened up a bank to allow municipalities and infrastructure owners to take low-interest loans to put money essentially into projects that renews the infrastructure in Canada. They also started an Investing in Canada plan, which is $180 billion they put aside for low-interest loans and grants so that municipalities and others can apply and can receive good grant money to renew their infrastructure. So Canada kind of caught on finally after those 40 years of underinvestment, but a lot of it is too late and we're at a tipping point in Canada. So let's talk about a couple of case studies about this tipping point. So we're going to go through 3 catastrophic events that occurred due to, we'll go through each one separately. So this first one is a rail failure of CP rails, a derailment in 2000 due to a broken plug rail joint that caused the derailment due to an inspection that was missed after a repair was done. Luckily, there were no fatalities in this, but a significant environmental impact and cleanup. and evacuation of people from their homes, and it completely eroded the public's confidence in CP Rail's ability to manage safety and reliability. The second one's from Miami. It's from 2021. It's the Surfside condo collapse that occurred. Catastrophic. 98 people lost their lives because of this one. This building's only 40 years old when this collapse happened. Obviously, way too early for a disaster like this to happen. So there was some other factors that contributed to the failure of this asset, and it was corroded rebar that led to the loss of structural strength of the concrete for this facility. And the issue was identified during a structural assessment, but no urgency was placed on it. It was essentially, it was noted that there was some corrosion of the rebar, but because the inspector didn't have the corrosion expertise, there was no real alert put into this. And unfortunately, 98 people died because of it, affecting thousands and thousands of lives. And this last case study example here is the water main break in Calgary. We should all be aware of this one. Occurred last June, where damage and corroded pipes left undetected led to massive breaks. There was immediately water restrictions and limited water usage for months. It affected downtown businesses and, of course, eroded the public's confidence in Calgary's ability to provide drinking water. And what really stands out with this case is that IPEGA in Alberta started an investigation to find the cause of the failure. This is the city of Calgary. These are public servants. These are public sector workers. And what they're looking into is the management of that aging infrastructure. The management is under scrutiny. We're not talking about a design where there was design errors and a collapse shortly after construction, which is more of a traditional failure that we've seen. But this is the longevity of the asset wasn't being maintained. Asset management may or may not have been getting done to the level or competency that is needed to maintain these public services. Ask yourself, how does this impact the engineering profession? Why is this happening? Remember the story of the merchant, the cost of procrastination. Inspection and maintenance programs may not be receiving the expertise or funding needed to prevent failures. The illusion of control. We have an asset management department. We're doing asset management. You know how many times I've heard an owner or somebody in leadership say, hey, we have an asset management department. We're doing asset management. And then I go and talk to the guy who works in the asset management department. And because I'm an infrastructure expert, the guy kind of uses me as a counselor. He's like, man, I've only got this. I've been in this role for a year or two. There was no training. We don't even know completely where all of our assets are. We're still trying to figure out what kind of condition ratings to give them. Like, we're so far behind. Just because you have an asset management department doesn't mean that asset management is working properly within the organization. Careful about that illusion of control. And then compounding problems, decades of underinvestment are catching up. We talked about that 40 years of underinvestment. It's starting to catch up. Ask yourself, as a registered engineer, how well do you apply best management practices to prevent failures to critical assets? How well do you apply the best management practices to prevent failures? Think about that for a little while. Let's talk about asset management, introduction to it, what it means. First, we'll start with how it's defined. ISO 55000, which is an international standard on asset management. It's kind of a benchmark. It's a go-to standard for this whole concept of asset management. It defines asset management as a coordinated activity of an organization to realize value from its assets. So let's break that down. A coordinated activity is defined by ISO as ensuring that planning, think about these as departments, your planning department, your finance department, your operations department, and your maintenance department all support the same objectives. Who has worked in an organization where not all departments necessarily support the same objectives? Sometimes, isn't it a bit of a push and pull and an argument, and it's like, oh, that department this and that department that. And it's like, they're not doing their part. And it's like, oh, we did ours. They didn't do theirs. It's like, that's not right. Asset management is a coordinated activity. Everyone should be pulling the rope the same direction to add value or to realize value from assets. So what is value, right? So value is delivering a measurable output whether it's financial, making money, service-based, that's providing exceptional, services to customers, environmental, or social. So it's getting value out of your assets. You need to be getting value out of your assets. Most of those in engineering work in asset owning organizations. And how often are you thinking about how are we getting value out of our assets? How are we coordinating together to get value out of our assets? That's the definition of asset management. Outcomes. So we show these failures on the right, and the benefits from asset management is, yeah, it prevents failures if done right. You could detect and repair issues before failures occur. It guides investments. Data will inform decision making and will ensure that assets receive the inspections and maintenance needed to reach or surpass their expected service life. It provides that data-driven information for our decision makers to make better and more informed decisions about how to apply funding to infrastructure. And it protects reputation. A well-maintained asset indicates that the owner values safety, quality, and reliability. And this will be seen by the public. So asset management in a practical sense is knowing your assets. What do we have? Where is it? What condition is it in? What needs to get done to it? How do I prioritize what needs to get done to it? It's a centralized knowledge database. It's having all of your information somewhere that's easily accessible, and not just easily accessible by you, easily accessible by the team, the departments, the coordinated activity. It's good maintenance practices. It's actually doing preventative maintenance, not just on a not just in a plan, but actually putting the funding into it and getting maintenance done. It's keeping records updated. So when you have new assets, when you modify assets, when you remove assets, it's making sure your record keeping is up to date. And again, using data for investments. It's ensuring that those finance departments and those leadership roles where they approve funding, that they have the right information to make better decisions. Ask yourself, if asset management makes so much sense, Darren, why isn't everybody doing it? It's a good question. Real world constraints get in the way. We'll start with lack of asset management expertise. My experience speaking here, leadership roles, especially those in council chairs, mayors, ministers, presidents, CFOs, CEOs, directors, executive directors, ADMs, DMs, and all of that level of leadership, they really, not all of them, a lot of them lack infrastructure management expertise. It's just not a part of their background. They lack that technical skill. And in most organizations, the vision, the culture is top down. If our leadership are lacking that skill, it's not a big wonder why there's issues downstream. Absence of tools and condition data. Owners lack tools and condition data. This is seen all the time in municipalities, urban, rural. They just don't know what they have. They don't know the condition. They don't have a centralized database. They don't get funding for it. They're working off of memories and paper copies that are in somebody's filing cabinet. It's overwhelming. This is seen a lot with utilities and government ministries where you have a lot of assets. Like a lot of these utilities, energy, electricity, you don't just have hundreds or thousands. You have tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, sometimes in the millions of assets. So where do I start? How do I prioritize? Where's the best place to spend my money? How do I justify this is the best investment versus that one over there? And who do I listen to? And how do I prioritize, right? All of that is so overwhelming, it often freezes decision makers, and it just kind of gets put aside for a while. And then there's some employee turnover. Then the next guy comes in, he's like, oh, a lot of assets. Where do I start? How do I prioritize? And that's a cycle that keeps going. And probably more times than not, maintenance loses out to shiny new projects. I've seen this my entire life. Maintenance loses out to shiny new projects time and time and time again. So what do we do about all this? Okay, let's become future ready by applying an asset management framework. I'm going to propose 4 key areas for us to think on: life cycle thinking, smart technologies, organizational knowledge, and an asset management plan for new infrastructure. Life cycle thinking. So what's life cycle thinking? It's designing assets with the entire life cycle in mind, from planning all the way to decommissioning. Let's contrast the two, the traditional focus to the life cycle thinking focus. Traditionally, design, build, done. Engineers have often in the past thought the project is done when the asset's in the air and it's built and it's commissioned and it's like, hey, project's done, I'm done, I can go on to the next one. That's a traditional focus that has led to significant problems downstream. Life cycle thinking focus means the project it's not done when your project is done. The design of the build and the operations, the maintenance, the long years of the asset being in service, and then the renewal, that's like life extending. That's can we get more years of the service life of this asset? And then decommissioning. A lot of assets have to be decommissioned, pulled out of the ground at some period of time. And are we considering the environmental impacts that these assets have created? We have to return the earth to the state that it was before we installed our assets. So we have to reclaim that earth. So we have to put money and attention into the decommission too, and everything along that life cycle of the asset. We need to look at optimizing for total cost of ownership, right? So the traditional focus, you optimize for the upfront costs, the cost of materials and labor. And if I can just, optimize the material thickness on this, it's going to save like 8 cents, a ton, and then we're gonna save, $800 for the construction of this. But are we looking at the life cycle of that asset? Should we put a corrosion allowance in? Should we put in some other features that allow this asset to be maintained remotely in the future? These are the things that we need to be considering, because the life cycle of the asset is what's important here, not just the traditional focus. Why does it matter? So 70 to 80% of the asset costs occur after construction. And decisions made during design lock in the future costs of how that asset has to get maintained and operated. It's the most critical point in the asset's life is that design and a construction period, because everything's locked in for the future of the life of that asset. Ask yourself, when designing, how easy is it to maintain? Can my asset be easily monitored, or can it be monitored remotely? What is the expected life cycle cost? This is the type of information we need to be really considering. When we talk about life cycle costs, I'm going to just show a curve here, which is a typical 80-year service life asset. So this is something like a water main. Look at year 0. It starts essentially high, the cost of acquisition, and then that blue line. Then immediately it drops down. And then I'm going to also explain here the failures that can occur. So the early years, you can have material defects and incorrect installation and things like that can lead to failures. If it passes that phase, it goes into regular operations and maintenance, where routine maintenance is getting done. That's that orange line that's horizontal across the bottom there. And maintenance operations getting done. And, for a fairly long period of time, typically about 50 to 60, 70 years. During that time period, there can be random failures, things like operation errors, maintenance issues, and things like that come about. And then towards the last 25% or so of the asset's life, you start to see wear out failures. That's when there's aging components of an asset that start breaking down. You'll get an outage, you'll get some issues like that. And then it's time to really start considering the decommission of that asset or the life extension of that asset, because as you can see, the curve on the right there, the blue, it really increases sharply because you're nearing the end of that asset life, and you're going to start witnessing higher maintenance costs, unplanned downtime, and things like that. That's the life cycle of the asset. 70 to 80% of the asset costs occur after construction. And please, if I can leave you with something in your mind, think that the work is not done after initial construction. There's a lot of attaboys and appreciation that gets sent out for building an asset, but that's just the beginning. We're not done yet. We have to think of the whole life cycle. Key takeaways. Early design decisions have the highest influence on life cycle performance. Design with the entire asset lifespan in mind, and monitor and identify failure patterns early to implement predictive maintenance. We'll talk a little bit about that more shortly. Ask yourself, can we design smarter now to reduce future operations and maintenance headaches? It's a very important question to ask yourself. And if you don't know, go talk to some people that operate these things. They'll tell you exactly what headaches they have. We'll talk more about that soon right away. Smart technologies, there's all types of sensors and devices that can give you real-time monitoring, remote monitoring, and give you instantaneous feedback through cloud servers. There's incredible amount of information and technology out there. I'm going to touch on one that I use as my company. What we do is we use these acoustic sensors, which monitors the any potential leaks in water mains. So we install sensors on valves and hydrants. They talk to each other through the cloud. There's an AI tool that reads on if there's any acoustic increases during an overnight period. We install them over a 24-hour period, and they identify where to sub-meter accuracy where there's leaks, if it's small, medium, or large leaks. This is incredible technology that allows us to determine if water mains are leaking so that we can help prevent catastrophic failures. This technology is out there, and it's actually quite affordable, but you have to believe, you have to want to do it. You have to have a program. You have to get some funding approved for this type of stuff, because traditionally these sensors weren't installed in the assets. These are aging water mains. So this is one tool that we use that works incredibly effective. And there's all types of smart technologies that you need to consider and research when designing new infrastructure. GIS-based systems for condition, for seeing the condition of your assets. These are basic map-based asset tracking where you can keep all the records in one space. This is a very good tool. There's all types of products out there. There's dozens of them. Different, companies that give different modules, that give, different, options for the end user. So just generalizing here, these are great centralized databases where you can keep all of your information into one place. You can keep historical records, you can keep pictures, you can keep costs, you can have the asset condition, age, all that service information all into one area. You can export information and present it to leadership to say, here's some actual data why there's failures occurring, or this is how to justify funding. These tools, these are nothing new about these types of tools. They're very out there in the market, and these are smart technologies that help us manage better. AI and machine learning, it goes without saying, it's here, it's not going away, it's going to improve things. And I'm not talking just about ChatGPT. There are all types of AI tools out there that will speed up the analysis of information, that will help identify risk trends and cost anomalies and usage patterns, that will give us all types of information at our fingertips and sometimes save days of analytics, of manual analysis. And this is information we need to be studying and researching and adopting. Digital twins and the future of asset intelligence. Again, a great technology. Just picture a building, say, that has a 3D model of it, a virtual 3D model though, but you're able to enter through that building virtually and able to see the different flow pressures and the different condition ratings throughout the building, and you're able to visually manage the asset like this versus a big old spreadsheet or some dashboards that are hard to analyze how I make decisions with. Digital twins and these tools are very common and can be used very advantageously to asset managers to give them more real-time, better information to make decisions about their assets. Those are smart technologies that can be adopted. There's a lot out there. I just barely touched on it. Organizational knowledge. This is about the knowledge of asset management within your organization. So let's start with the definition of asset management is the coordinated activity of an organization to realize value from its assets. Coordinated activity, right? So often asset management is considered to be one department's responsibility. Often, like, there's an asset management department, right? And like that asset management, they do asset management. Asset management's getting done because we got a department that does it. It's the wrong mindset. The right mindset is that we're all part of the asset management team, and a lot of the issues have been created maybe because the organizational structure where they put an asset management department in place and there hasn't been the proper communication that we actually all do asset management. Asset management is the coordinator role. That's the individual that's trying to get everybody to work together. That's the one that's like really trying to implement the good practices of asset management, but like they need you. They need all of these other departments. It's not just them that's doing asset management. You are too. If you just consider the department names going for, instead of like engineering, it would be asset engineering, asset sustainability, asset planning, asset maintenance, asset data management, asset risk management. We're all a part of this. We're all working towards these assets getting more value for our organization. It's not just one department's responsibility, it's all of us. Ask yourself, do I see myself responsible for asset management? That's what I want to inspire you with today. I want you to see yourself responsible for asset management. How do we go about doing that? How do we get information into an organization? I suggest don't wait for someone to tell you what to do. Don't wait for your leadership. Don't wait for your boss to like give it as one of your yearly goals. Don't wait for the owner of the company to tell. Like, start with self-study. Start with understanding and reading the basics of asset management. Start studying your asset and how can I apply asset management principles to these assets, whatever department you're in. There's a significant amount of information online in industry groups. I really recommend ones like CNAM, ISO 55000, and PMAC. These are three that have a lot of information out there to allow you to join groups and get involved with studying the information that the ones that came before you have already written and put into textbooks. Asset owning organizations, I really want to encourage you to increase the training, bring in formal trainers, bring in guest speakers, have lunch and learns, bring in external expertise if and when needed to train your team, to get the conversation going about asset management and how direly important it is for us to adopt it. And think about how, when designing new projects, the importance of having asset management expertise at the table. Now, I don't just put this on design engineers. Anybody who's at a new construction project needs to be asking the team, hey, who's representing the asset management's life cycle thinking in here? It's like, we all got to be. So it's like, don't let conversations happen about design without thinking about, but how does that affect operations and maintenance? How does that affect lowering the amount of maintenance that we have to do down the road? Make sure those conversations are there in the room. Now I'm going to bring up a concept called an asset management plan for new infrastructure. Think about this as an owner's manual for your car. So picture your car, your glove box, what's in it, your owner's manual. What's in that owner's manual? A complete list of all the components of your car and a detailed maintenance schedule for your car. Now, take that concept and apply it to new infrastructure. Apply it to the asset that you're designing. Think about designing an owner's manual that has all the components and a complete maintenance list for the asset that you're designing. What am I talking about? Well, I'm talking about when you're designing and developing a new asset that you're building an owner's manual, just like the automotive industry's done, that you're providing over to the O&M groups as a deliverable of the project so that they have a detailed list of how to manage this thing. It's no secret that there's a thrown over the fence feeling that's present in most new projects. How many projects have I been involved in where the operations and maintenance people are like, yeah, they put that in service 2 years ago. No one told me about it. Yeah, we got a new building added to our portfolio, but no extra funding, no extra maintenance personnel, but we got a new $200 million asset. These are issues. We can help address these issues through this concept of an owner's manual for infrastructure. So I'll talk about that in a little bit deeper here. If you want help to build one, this is what my company does. We're going to give you a complimentary asset management framework for new infrastructure. Just email us. It's info@assetstrategyinc.com. Put in the subject asset management framework. My office will send you a free framework over to give you an understanding of how these are built. And then you can always reach out to us if you want help customizing one and building one out for your organization, or just want to talk about it in more detail. Please reach out to us. I've got a few slides here I'm going to go over that just gives you an overview of what should be in your asset management plan for new infrastructure. Okay, so first you need to have some form of a handover checklist where it's very clear the asset that's been built and its ID and description, location. It's got to have all of these components in it on the left here. Like, what is the maintenance plan? What's the warranty information? The asset data has to get uploaded to the registry. Have the operations staff been trained? It's the whole communication change management piece before it's handed over that there's this sign-off process. This is the asset handover checklist. Another is the life cycle costing. All that conversation I had about the life cycle thinking and the life cycle curve, all of that needs to get done to be making decisions for assets. And all of that needs to be documented and handed over into our owner's manual. Why is that important? Here's why. The finance department will have a darn good understanding of how much maintenance dollars that they have to be giving or issuing to the maintenance departments because they have a new asset that's built. It's not going to be like there's more money needed. No, that's going to be known because there was a life cycle costing chapter, essentially, or information that was provided with the asset that very clearly indicates what are the annual O&M costs? What's this expected service life? How do you renew this asset? When do you renew it? When do you inject some capital funds to life extend the asset? This is critical information needed to own an asset that is often left out. Maintenance plan, think of your car, glove box, owner's manual, flip it open, maintenance plan inside. Powerful information needs to be put into infrastructure now. See, we have it a little easier with our cars, right? Because you can just drive it into a shop and you don't really need to open that owner's manual. And the shop will take care of it, give you a bill. Sure, but you can't do that with infrastructure. Sure, you can call companies like mine and we can send out inspectors and do an assessment of your infrastructure and tell you what needs to get done. That can get done, but it's a lot more difficult. These are a lot more expensive assets. So in our owner's manual, if we have a maintenance plan that identifies clearly what systems or items or components need to be maintained, what needs to be maintained on those components, and how frequent does the maintenance have to get done? Imagine that information from an owner's perspective saying, hey, I know how to operate this thing now. Hey, I had employee turnover, but I can just give this manual to the new engineer and we can operate this thing now. Powerful information. Key performance indicators. How do you validate or measure that the asset that you built is performing the way you designed it to? Well, we need to develop performance measures in there. We need to have targets in there. We need to have customer expectations. We need to have, the necessary KPIs to be able to know if, it's the gauges on your dashboard in the car example again. How do you know when you're running out of fuel? Well, you look at the gauge, and how do we do that for infrastructure? You could develop all of that and build all of that. That's the life cycle thinking with assets. If you need any help, like I said, contact our office, reach out for a free framework, if nothing else. Please, we'd love to share one with you. I've got a few minutes left, and then we're going to get to a few questions, and then it's the end of our hour already. Call to action. So if you're an engineer in a leadership role, one-on-one, I ask you, look into your policies. Do you have an asset management policy? Do you have a strategy or a roadmap, like where you're going in the next 5 or 10 years? Do you have asset management plans that are living documents that get updated on an annual basis? If you say no to any 3 of those, this is an area of action that I ask you to focus on. Do you have an asset management steering committee? These are powerful because it's not just one department. It's not just your asset management department. Steering committees have somebody from finance and somebody from operations and on and on and on. So you have all this cross-sector or cross collaboration within your organization that gives input into the asset management of the organization. And do you have staff training for your staff, like onboarding new employees? Why don't you have an introduction course to asset management? When you're doing those annual renewals or refreshers of the training, like we do with numerous other types of training modules, why aren't we doing that with asset management? Technical information that lets us know that, hey, we are an asset owning organization. We should all be taking a little bit of this technical training. We need to get the information and we need to get the people talking. So I really press on you as leaders to consider making these, addressing these topics here. If you're an engineer in a design role, reconnect with your trade. Engineering is a trade. Before computers, engineers were in the field. Engineers built things with their hands. Engineers weren't just on the computers. Please reconnect with your trade. Get out into the field. Go see the assets that you're building, but different ones that have been in service for 40, 60, 80 years. Go talk to the blue collar workers that operate them. Man, they've got so much information that they want to tell you about how to fix it. You just got to ask them the questions. You just got to go hang out with them for a little bit and get that knowledge, get that field knowledge into your designs. You'll never have a bad day getting into the field. I strongly encourage you as an engineer in a design role to really think outside the office box. And engineers and operations and maintenance, you are the feedback loop. You have the history. You have that information that those design engineers and those in the planning need to know. You need to speak up, but you got to bring information to them, data. And don't wait for a new design to fix an old problem, because a new design may fix a problem for the new asset. But like all of your existing assets that are aging, these are yours. You need to look at what kind of condition monitoring tools do I need? How do I need to retrofit this? Can I do remote monitoring or real-time data collection? You need to really think about how we level up with managing these assets as they age. The technology is out there. A lot of it's quite affordable, but we need to think about what we need. We need to put a plan together. We need to justify and get funding approved and implement this stuff. And engineers in programs in universities, man, I did an undergrad in Regina here. I took 5 calculus classes. Haven't used a thing of that calculus in 1 hour of my career. But no classes on asset management, no classes on infrastructure mindsets. You know, I really encourage a curriculum overhaul of making sure we put asset management at the forefront for all of our engineers in undergrad that are going to be working on in programs that are asset owning organizations. A lot of our engineers coming out of school just can't tie in the purpose of what they're working on. They haven't been able to see that strategic mindset thinking, and it's, you know, maybe a lack of courses in our undergrad classes. Really want to encourage that. In our co-op programs and our labs and things like that, we got to get our engineers out into the field talking to folks that work on assets, not just touring around in a bus looking at things and then coming back to the school thinking you did a lab, but actually talking to the people that build, that maintain, hearing the stories, inspiration. And then also hands-on. We really want our engineers to work with their hands a little bit more. There is an issue in these days with the computers kind of keep us kind of very locked up. So in our engineering programs, to get our engineers in the field using inspection tools, using some wrenches, getting them building something, you know, it's very, very important for their knowledge and adaptation of construction and maintenance principles. Okay, 2 slides left. Key takeaways: remember the merchant's story. Smaller pairs become bigger pairs, increasing costs. Left unchecked will sink your ship. The state of Canadian infrastructure is not good. There was 4 decades of underinvestment resulting in degradation. There is an urgent need now to do something about it. Future-ready asset management framework. We talked on 4 key areas: life cycle thinking, smart technologies, increasing organizational knowledge, and that infrastructure owner's manual. And our call to action today: use your influence as an engineer with a position within an organization that can move towards future-ready infrastructure. And remember, the goal is to do it together. A lot of asset management at times can be overwhelming. ASI Engineering is here to help. Our firm provides support and confidence to asset owners all across Western Canada. We provide training. We work directly on asset management projects all across the spectrum of asset management, from what do I have, what do I do with it, what condition is it in, to developing softwares, to capital planning. Contact us for any projects you have in mind, and please reach out for a complimentary asset management framework, info@assetstrategyinc.com. Just send an email over and we'll respond with that free framework. that concludes the webinar. Friends, thank you. From me to you, thank you very much. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and we'll see if there's time for a few questions. Over to you, Kevin.
I will, it's Angela Foster. I will start reading some questions here. Karen says, in organizations I have worked in, the asset management group have been led by finance types, not engineers. How do you shift their focus?
Very good question. So asset management before about the mid 2000s is a concept that comes from the financial world. The asset was typically a financial asset. So many organizations have adopted asset management from a financial lens. How to switch their focus, how to switch their mindset, training, getting people together, working in a workshop. I think bringing in experts to help build out an asset management roadmap so that it's not simply a conversation that ends there, but it's like, let's build out a multi-year roadmap. Let's reframe what asset management means. Projects we work on, we develop asset management policies and strategies that help to indicate that asset management is about infrastructure management, not financial management. And if it starts with a policy that gets approved by a board of directors or council, and then you have that top-down reassurance that this is what we're talking about now. But thanks for your question very much.
Thank you. Clement asks, is there any asset management focused bodies or associations in Saskatchewan? I'm a member of the Institution of Asset Management in the UK and new to Regina.
Welcome to Saskatchewan. Winter's almost over, spring's here, it gets better, I promise. The IAM is very general. I'm not a big proponent of it, nor do I really recommend too much study in it, just because it's very general. You'll get some principles out of it, but as far as like getting down to the asset types and getting down into that, Saskatchewan, we're building that, but it lacks a little bit. CNAM, I really suggest CNAM. Just go to their website. It's the Canadian Network of Asset Managers. It's Canada-wide, not just Saskatchewan, but like there is a body of believers there. And I say believer by like an asset management focused mindset. Great group of folks there. They've got all types of like meetings and groups that you can be a part of. And I really recommend checking their website out and honestly connecting with me after if you want to connect with anybody within CNAM. We're members of it ourselves, and I really do think that they're probably the leading group in Canada that gets down to the details of asset management, not just that high level overview that IAM provides.
Thank you. I have an individual who is asking if you could put the last slide up again for contact information while I read another question or two here. You gave some examples of disasters that happen due to long-term infrastructure maintenance deficits. Are things getting better?
No. It's the answer. Things aren't getting better. Where I travel about, which is across Western Canada, I talk to asset owning organizations across Western Canada. About 90% still have their head in the sand, which means that, they're new to their role. There's a lot of turnover. They don't take the aging infrastructure concern urgently. And that's the reality with about 90%, is a rough number. And then you got the other 10%, which I call they're the early adopters of asset management. They're the ones who do asset management plans. They're the ones who are out there getting real information and making decisions based off of it. So we have an issue with about 90% of the asset owners out there. And that's one reason that I started this company, because it's like that obvious to me that it's like we need some help out there, and that's my mission. If I can just explain that in Ontario, which of course began its population growth 200 years before Saskatchewan did, in 2017, the government in Ontario legislated asset management. You just got to Google it and take a look. They require municipalities to provide asset management plans and update their asset management plans, which get reviewed by a regulatory board, because asset failures that lead to fatalities or, you know, environmental impact, and like these are serious things, and we got to do something about them. And because of Ontario, they're like centuries ahead of us essentially with their population and infrastructure. They've had too many disasters where the government had to get involved. Now, it's not regulated in Western Canada yet, but over time, I do see it trending that way, especially after those incidents like that happening in Calgary last year. Thanks for your question.
I think that's all the questions we have time for, Kevin.
Thanks, Angela. On behalf of APICS and the Professional Development Committee, Darren, I'd really like to thank you for the presentation. Very, very informative. And I would also like to thank the attendees who were able to join us today. Just a reminder about the link to the survey has been posted in the Q&A and will also be sent to you by email. Said your feedback on these surveys is very important. The committee does review them. And that helps us develop and plans future professional development events. So really appreciate if you could take a few minutes to do that. And thank you all and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you very much.